Have you ever wondered if we still have a government of the people in the United States? Ben Franklin had said that we had a republic if we could keep it, which is, of course, a government of the people. And I would say that right about now we could have a republic if we fight to get it back. But I feel like it's hard to know what that's like, the nuts and bolts of it, unless you really get in to the nitty-gritty of the political process here. And so that's why I'm going to talk to Mark Zasadny today, who was a delegate to the Republican National Convention in 2012, one of the 2,000 who ultimately they ended up endorsing Mitt Romney to be the Republican candidate for president in 2012. Hi, Mark.
Hello, Hannah.
Thanks for joining me.
Sure, no problem.
Okay, so Mark, did you enjoy being a delegate?
I did. Overall, I thought it was a really interesting experience. I'm all for learning things and seeing what goes on the inside. So
yeah.
Yes.
Was it a good learning experience?
It was a learning experience. It was a little bit of a disillusionment. I'll describe it. The process was very controlled by the National Republican Party and the Romney campaign. So to see the level of control was a little startling.
The level of control. So can you give us some examples of what that looked like?
Well, they prohibited any other candidates' signs on the floor, so that there was just kind of this monolithic block of apparent support for Romney. We had a person smuggle a Ron Paul sign in our delegation, Wade Brooks, who was a delegate. He had every right to be there. And he was approached by these men in black hats. They called them the Black Hats. They were like the bouncers for the convention. And they said he'd have to give up his sign. And he said, I don't really want to. I have a right to speech here. And they said, no, if you don't give us your sign, we're going to have to escort you off the floor. And they did. They escorted him off the floor.
So they were basically saying that you didn't have a right to your own opinion at the National Convention.
Well, we could have our opinions if we kept them to ourselves.
Oh.
So, yeah.
Well, so if you behave yourself. So how did that look? They handed you Mitt Romney signs. I saw that there were a lot of hand-painted Mitt Romney signs.
Yeah, those are handmade, but they're handmade by Romney staffers. If you look at any video, you'll see like these big white sheets with "We love Mitt" or "We heart Mitt" or.
So they're fake.
They're fake. Well, they're real. They're real signs, yeah. But they're not. They don't represent any kind of grassroots.
So there weren't a bunch of like college kids sitting around writing up, "We love Mitt."
There were those college kids writing up signs, but they worked for the Romney campaign. Then those same college-age kids would go up and down the aisles and wave these signs at people and try to get them to take them, to then wave them, with a bunch of excitement when. At the appropriate time. So.
Okay. Well, and so as a Ron Paul supporter, how did you feel? Like, did you have a voice at the convention? Did you? How did they handle? Because as far as I know, going into the convention, Ron Paul had everything he needed to be nominated from the floor, and the plan was to do that. So how did that go down?
He did, and it would have been largely symbolic because nobody really expected Ron Paul to win the nomination.
At that point in the RNC.
Right.
Yeah.
Romney had been the presumptive nominee for quite a while, which is part of the problem. We might come back to that. But as far as how we were treated by the other delegates, often fine. They were just excited. The atmosphere is a lot like a big party. But then when it came time to the business, there was a real effort to shut down any dissent, is how I'd put it.
And so how did that happen? Because as far as I know, he qualified to be nominated. So,
he
but
did.
He wasn't nominated.
He qualified, but then they changed the rules for what threshold number of states a candidate had to get to be nominated.
They changed the rules after the convention started.
They changed the rules in the middle of the game, which we all know is a fantastic way to run.
Well, that's fair. I mean, we all do that. We all do that. When I'm losing at Monopoly,
right.
I just, yeah, I get it. I get it. So how did that look? What did they do?
Well, they have a rules committee that meets beforehand, before all the other delegates show up, and they're supposed to work out a lot of the details. So there was some of that, but then when we got there, the day we were supposed to vote on the rules changes, the proposed rules changes, we were given a booklet. It was nicely bound, printed, finished booklet with the proposed rule changes in them, and they were printed as the new rules.
The new rules, but you obviously voted on those, right?
No, we
that's
hadn't
how-
voted
yeah.
yet. It was like the
huh.
order got switched,
Oh.
strangely.
Interesting.
So, and a lot of the rules in there were actually like very carefully and very blatantly crafted to kill the local grassroots activism, and really to.
Well, I'm sure that wasn't on purpose.
No, I think it was.
Yeah.
And what they did then effectively is put more hands in the or more power in the hands of the party at the national level, and more power in the hands of the presumptive candidate, whoever that may be in the future.
So it's hard to imagine how this could have happened because this is a pretty public process. I mean, the whole thing. You were on CNN, and you know it's a televised, totally open to the public process, right?
Yeah, most of it's televised.
So how is it possible then that they had a rules change that was not approved by everyone, and it wasn't just readily available to the public to be seen as cheating?
Sure. Well, when it came time to vote, you know, the Reince Priebus was up there reading off there's like an official statement, you know, on this is what we're voting for. And then he calls for all those in favor, say aye, all those opposed, say nay. So all those in favor say aye to the proposed rule changes, and there's a big crowd of people that yell aye. And then all those opposed say nay, and all the people who were there because they believed in a representative democracy yelled nay because they thought this was a big power grab. And
that's your picture on CNN, is you
yeah,
yelling no with a bunch of other people, right?
Yeah. And it's funny because it often got captioned to give the impression that like Ron Paul supporters were just there like a mob yelling and trying to cause trouble. But no, this is something we really felt strongly about, and not just because
that you don't
it
change
affected
the rules
us.
in the middle of the game.
Just that
yeah,
it was
right.
it was really crooked.
Yeah.
So anyway, it was very even. The vote. Most people that were sitting up in the stands, you know, not taking part, objective observers by all accounts said it was even. On the teleprompter, and Reince Priebus said this, is the ayes have it. And the floor erupted. It was crazy. It was pandemonium.
Yeah. And when you have a situation like that.
Yeah, normally if it's too close to call by, you know, just listening, people call for division, and anybody on the floor is normally welcome to do this. And so there were calls for division. And that means that each head of each state's delegation should count up their people, the ayes and the nays, and then submit that to the people who tally all that, and then they come up with the no fooling. This is, you know, so many ayes and so many nays, and even if it's only one on the aye side or one on the nay side, that's how it stands.
But then everybody knows who actually won the vote,
yep.
right?
But they just kept rolling. It was like,
well, and they had already printed out the booklet
right.
before they voted on it anyway.
It was all done, yeah.
And it was on the teleprompter, and
it was very tidy.
Yes, yeah, very tidy. Yeah.
Another thing I'd like to mention that I thought characterized the whole enterprise down there was the way the platform is changed. The Republican Party, the Democrat Party, all the parties have platforms which are statements of principle or statements of belief that define them as a party.
Right, so this is what makes us Republicans, or
yes,
this is what makes us Democrats.
Exactly.
That's the platform.
And what happened down there is that Romney's attorneys and campaign
because Romney
workers,
actually wasn't a Republican in belief, right? I mean,
well, no, a lot of people
more than like Obama
right.
might not be a Democrat in belief.
Part of the reason I didn't support Romney was I didn't think he was actually fiscally conservative. Surprise.
Yeah.
So I counted up, and there were 70 items in the platform, 70 or so, that were inconsistent with Romney's stated positions. I only picked stated positions, not ones I thought he might disagree on. And that can be embarrassing for a campaign if they don't agree with their own party's platform. So what happens is there are people inside that system. There's a platform committee that meets before the convention. And changes were submitted to make the platform more consistent with Romney's campaign positions. So
that makes things nicer.
It does. It really streamlines the whole thing.
Yeah.
It makes it a lot easier to avoid criticism, for one, because you can't be skewered by policy positions if your platform all of a sudden matches yours. Hooray.
Yeah, and interestingly, although I don't have a Democrat national delegate to speak to, the same thing happened from 2008 when Obama was chosen, and then it became clear that he was not going to be the anti-war, pro-civil liberties candidate that he marketed himself to be. They just removed all those things to the platform in 2012 at the DNC. So where they used to say they support habeas corpus, they no longer say that. And
right.
you know,
things that were deliberately put in there to
right.
give the needle to George Bush. because he was into drone wars in Guantanamo.
Right.
All of a sudden they disappeared.
When
for
Obama became the same
Yep.
as his predecessor. But that gives you just a small snapshot of what it's like to try and participate in the political process in the United States. And I would say that unless we wrest control from these, it really is coming from the two major parties. It's coming from the Republicans and the Democrats, and both are controlling things from the top down, and they're making sure that they fill their pockets. If you want to know, why it happens, always follow the money. Somebody's getting rich because of who is chosen, and their positions will line up with making those people at the top the most money. So hopefully that was helpful, and thank you for your time.